with a grateful heart, give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 43. Meanwhile, the famine remained severe throughout the region. As a result, when Jacob's family was beginning to eat the last of the grain that they had brought back from Egypt, their father Jacob told his sons, "Go back to Egypt and buy us some food." But Judah reminded him, "The man distinctly warned us, 'You'll never see my face unless your brother comes with you. So if you send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy some food. But if you don't send him, we're not going, because the man told us, "You'll never see my face unless your brother is with you."'" Israel replied, "Why did you make all this trouble by telling the man that you have another brother?" "The man specifically asked about us and our relatives," they responded. "He asked us, 'Is your father still alive, and do you have another brother?' So we answered his questions. How could we have known that he would tell us to bring our brother back with us?" "Send a young man with me," Judah told his father Israel, "and we'll get up and go so we can survive and not die, and that includes all of us, you, and our families. I'll even offer myself to guarantee that I'll be responsible for him. If I don't bring him back and present him to you, I'll personally bear the consequences forever." After all, if we hadn't delayed, we could have been there and back twice by now. "If that's the way it has to be," their father Israel replied, "then do this: take some of the best produce of the land in your containers and take them to the man as a gift, some resin ointment, some honey, fragrant resins, myrrh, pistachios, and almonds. Also take twice as much money with you so you can return the money that had been replaced in the mouth of your sacks." Maybe it was an accounting mistake on his part. "And be sure to take your brother, too. So get up, return to the man, and may God Almighty cause the man to show compassion toward you. May he send all of you back, including your other brother and Benjamin. Now as for me, if I lose my children, I lose them." So the men took their gift and twice as much money, got up, took Benjamin with them, and set out for Egypt. Eventually they appeared before Joseph. As soon as Joseph noticed that Benjamin had come with them, he ordered his palace manager, "Bring the men into the palace. Slaughter an animal and prepare it, because these men will be dining with me for lunch." So the man did what Joseph had ordered, and brought the men to Joseph's palace. The men were terrified as they were being taken to Joseph's palace. "It's because of that money that was returned to our sacks the first time we were brought to him," they reasoned. "He's seeking an excuse to attack us, enslave us, and confiscate our donkeys." So they approached Joseph's palace manager and talked with him at the palace entrance. "Your Excellency," they said, "the first time we came here to buy food, when we arrived at our overnight lodging place, we opened our sacks and discovered each man's money was still in the mouth of his sack. All of our money was there. We've brought it back with us in full. We've also brought along some more money to buy supplies, but we don't know who put our money back into our sacks." "Relax," the manager said. "You can stop being afraid, now. Your God, the God of your father, has placed hidden treasure within those sacks for you. I've been paid in full." Then he brought Simeon out to them, ushered the men into Joseph's palace, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. Then off he went to prepare the honorary meal that was to be made ready for Joseph's arrival at noon, since they had been informed that they were going to be eating there. When Joseph arrived at his palace, his brothers brought to him their gifts that they had carried with them and bowed to the ground in front of him. Joseph asked them how they had been doing. "Is your father well, the older gentleman about whom you spoke?" he inquired. "Is he still alive?" "Your servant, our father, is doing well," they replied. "He is still alive." Then they bowed down in humility. As Joseph looked up and recognized his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother about whom you spoke to me?" And he addressed him directly, "May God be gracious to you, my son." At this, Joseph hurried out, deeply moved because of his brother, and looked for a place to weep by himself. He entered his personal quarters, wept there a while, then washed his face and came out. Barely controlling himself, he ordered his staff to serve the meal. Joseph's staff served him by himself, his brothers separately, and the Egyptian staff members by themselves, because the Egyptians wouldn't take their meal with the Hebrews, since doing so was detestable for the Egyptians. Meanwhile, the brothers were seated in front of Joseph in birth order, from firstborn to youngest. The men stared at one another in astonishment. Joseph himself brought portions to them from his own table, except that he provided to Benjamin 5 times as much as he did for each of the others. So they feasted together and drank freely with Joseph.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 44. Later, Joseph commanded his palace manager, "Fill the men's sacks to full capacity with food and replace each man's money at the top of the sack. Then place my cup, the silver one, in the top of the sack belonging to the youngest one, along with the money he brought to buy grain." So the manager did precisely what Joseph told him to do. Early the next morning, the men were sent on their way, along with their donkeys. They had not traveled far from the city when Joseph ordered his palace manager, "Get up, follow those men, and when you've caught up with them, ask them, 'Why did you repay evil for good? Don't you have the cup that my master uses to drink from and also uses to practice divination? You're wrong to have done this.'" So he went after them and made that accusation. "Your Excellency," they replied, "why do you speak like this? Far be it from your servants to act like this. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money that we found at the top of our sacks. How, then, could we have stolen silver or gold from your master's palace? Go ahead and execute whichever one of your servants is discovered to have it, and we'll remain as your master's slaves." "Agreed," he responded. "Just as you've said, the one who is found to have it in his possession will become my slave, and the rest of you will be innocent." So they quickly dismounted, unloaded their sacks onto the ground, and each one of them opened his own sack. The palace manager searched for the cup, beginning with the oldest brother's sack and ending with the youngest brother's sack, and there it was, in Benjamin's sack. At this, they all tore their clothes, reloaded their donkeys, and returned to the city. Joseph was waiting for them back at his palace when his brothers returned. They fell to the ground in front of him, and Joseph asked them, "Why did you do this? Don't you know that I'm an expert at divination?" "What can we say, Your Excellency?" Judah replied. "How can we explain this or justify ourselves? God has discovered the sin of your servants, and now we've become slaves to you, Your Excellency, both we and the one in whose possession the cup has been discovered." "Far be it from me to do this," Joseph responded. "The man in whose possession the cup was discovered will be my slave, but the rest of you may leave in peace to be with your father." But Judah approached him and begged him, "Your Excellency, please allow your servant to speak to you privately. Please don't be angry with your servant, since you are equal to Pharaoh." Your Excellency asked his servants, "Do you have a father or brother?" And we answered, "Your Excellency, we have an aged father and a younger child who was born when he was old. His brother is now dead, so he's the only surviving son of his mother. His father loves him. But then you ordered your servants, 'Bring him here to me so I can see him for myself.' So we told Your Excellency, the young man cannot leave his father, because if he were to do so, his father would die. But then you told your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes back with you, you won't see my face again.' Later on, after we had gone back to your servant, my father, we told him what Your Excellency had said. 'Go back,' our father ordered, 'and buy us a little food.' But we told him, 'We can't go back there. If our youngest brother accompanies us, we'll go back, but we cannot see the man's face again unless our youngest brother accompanies us.' Then your servant, our father, told us, 'You know my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them left me, so I concluded I'm certain that he has been torn to pieces, and I haven't seen him since then. If you take this one from me, too, and then something harmful happens to him, then it will be death for me and my sad, gray hair. So when I go back to your servant, my father, and the young man isn't with us, since he's constantly living life focused on his son, when he notices that the young man hasn't come back with us, he'll die, and your servants really will have brought death to your servant, our father, along with his sad, gray hair. Also, your servant pledged his own life as a guarantee of the young man's safety. I told my father, if I don't bring him back to you, you can blame me forever. Therefore, please allow your servant to remain as a slave to your excellency, instead of the young man, and let the young man go back home with his brothers. After all, how can I go back to my father if the young man doesn't accompany me? I'm afraid of what might happen to my father.
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 45. At this point, Joseph could not control his emotions any longer, so he cried out to everyone who was standing nearby, "Everybody, leave me." As a result, none of his staff was anywhere near him when he revealed himself to his brothers. He cried so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, including Pharaoh's household. Joseph blurted out, "I'm Joseph. Is my father really alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, because they had become terrified to be in his presence. Joseph implored his brothers, "Please come close to me." So they did. "I'm your brother Joseph, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt," he told them. "But don't be distressed or angry at yourselves because you sold me here, because God sent me ahead of you all in order to deliver us. That's because this famine has been going on for 2 years now in this region, and there are still 5 years left, during which there won't be any plowing or harvesting. God sent me ahead of you to keep you alive on the earth, and to save you all in a magnificent way. As a result, it wasn't you who sent me here, but God Himself. He established me as a father figure to Pharaoh himself. I'm in charge of his entire palace and ruler over the entire land of Egypt. So hurry up, go back to my father, and tell him that his son Joseph tells him, God has made me master of all of Egypt. Hurry up. Come leave with me. You are to live in the land of Goshen, near where I am, you, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks, your herds, and everything that you own. I'll provide for you there, since there are still 5 years of famine left to go, and you, your households, and everything you own would have otherwise become impoverished. Look, now. All of you can see me. And my own brother Benjamin can tell that it's really me speaking to you. So go tell my father about all of my splendor in Egypt. Tell him about everything that you've seen. Be quick about it, and bring my father down here." Then he threw his arms around Benjamin and wept as they embraced. He kissed all of his brothers and wept with them, too, and then his brothers were able to talk with him. As soon as the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had arrived, Pharaoh and his servants were ecstatic. Pharaoh told Joseph, "Be sure to tell your brothers, do this, load up your livestock, go back to the land of Canaan, get your father and your households, and come back to me. I'll give you the best of the land of Egypt and you can live off the abundance of the land." In addition, Pharaoh ordered, "Do this, Take some transport wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones to ride in, along with your wives, and bring your father and come. Don't worry about your household goods, because the best of all the land of Egypt is yours." So Israel's sons did what they were asked to do, and Joseph provided wagons for them, as Pharaoh had commanded. He also gave them provisions for the journey. He gave each of them some changes of clothes, but he also gave Benjamin 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothes. He sent his father 10 male donkeys loaded with the best of Egyptian goods and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provisions for his father during the journey. Then Joseph sent his brothers away, and they left for home. As they were leaving, Joseph admonished them, "Don't quarrel on the way back." So Joseph's brothers left Egypt and returned to the land of Canaan and to their father Jacob, where they informed their father, "Joseph is still alive. As a matter of fact, he's ruling the entire land of Egypt." But Jacob didn't believe them, because he had become cynical. However, as soon as his sons had told him everything Joseph had said, and after he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent along to carry him, their father Jacob's spirit was encouraged. "It's enough," Israel replied. "My son Joseph is still alive. I'm going to go see him before I die."
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One.
Genesis 46. Later, Israel began his journey, taking along everything that he owned, and arrived at Beersheba, where he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel through night visions, addressing him, "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am." Jacob replied, "I'm God, your father's God. Don't be afraid to move down to Egypt, because I'm going to turn you into a mighty nation there. I'm going down with you to Egypt, and I'm certainly going to bring you back again. And Joseph himself will be with you when you die." So Jacob got up and left Beersheba, and Israel's sons carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives in the transport wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry them. They took their livestock and their household property that they had acquired in the land of Canaan and traveled to Egypt. Jacob and all of his descendants went with him, including his sons, his grandsons, his daughters, and his granddaughters. Every one of his descendants accompanied him to Egypt. Here's a list of the names of Israel's sons, that is, of Jacob and his sons who moved to Egypt: Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. Reuben's sons Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. Simeon's sons Jemuel, Jamin, Ahad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, who was the son of a Canaanite woman. Levi's sons Gershon, Kohat, and Merari. And Judah's sons Er, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. Technically, Er and Onan had died in the land of Canaan. Perez's sons were Hezron and Hamel. Also included were Issachar's sons Tola, Puvah, Job, and Shimron, along with Zebulun's sons Sered, Elon, and Yaliel. These were all sons from Leah, whom she bore for Jacob in Paddan Aram, along with his daughter Dinah. He had 33 sons and daughters. Also included were Gad's sons Ziphion, Haggai, Shani, Esban, Eri, Arodi, and Areli, Asher's sons Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, and their sister Sarah. Beriah's sons Heber and Malchiel were also included. These were all sons from Zilpah, whom Laban had given to his daughter Leah. She bore these 16 children for Jacob. Jacob's wife Rachel's sons were Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph's sons born in the land of Egypt were Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On, bore for him. Benjamin's sons included Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ai, Rosh, Muppim, Huppim, and Ard. These were all the sons of Rachel, who were born for Jacob, 14 in all. Also included were Dan's son Hushim, Naphtali's sons Yaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These were sons of Bilhah, whom Laban had given to his daughter Rachel. She bore these children for Jacob, 7 in all. All of these people, who belonged to Jacob's family, traveled to Egypt. All of Jacob's direct descendants, not including his sons' wives, numbered 66 persons in all. Joseph had 2 sons born to him in Egypt, and all of Jacob's household who went to Egypt numbered 70. Jacob sent Judah ahead of them to meet with Joseph, who would be guiding them to Goshen, and so they arrived. Joseph prepared his chariot and went to meet his father Israel in Goshen. As soon as Jacob appeared in his presence, he embraced him and wept for a long time as he held on to him. "Now let me die," Israel told Joseph, "since I've seen your face and confirmed that you're still alive." But Joseph addressed his brothers and his father's household and told them, "I'll go up and tell Pharaoh that my brothers and my father's household have arrived from Canaan to be with me. I'll mention that the men are shepherds. Because they've been taking care of livestock, they brought along their flocks, their herds, and everything else that they own. When Pharaoh calls for you and asks you what's your occupation, you are to tell him, 'Your servants have been taking care of livestock since we were youths. We and our ancestors have taken care of livestock.' That way, you'll be able to live in the Goshen territory, since shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians."
Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One. Give thanks. We give thanks to